Favour, sorry. Right, we'll go to item, we have a staff member that has had to go to interview for they're interviewing someone for a role, so they will be back after lunch. So we're going to unfortunately skip item 11 for now, and then we'll move to items 12 and 13, which we are taking together. They are two different items. And then we're going to go to lunch after this. So it's our choice how long we want to take before lunch. Now, I know, Councillor Filipina, I know you have to head off. I wondered if you want to say a few brief words as the chair of the working group, and then if you need to head off during the item, it might be best if you speak first. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe te rangatire he mana ngā mihi ki a koe. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to make a few notes in regards to the open space sports and rec strategy and as the chair of the Open Space Sport and Recreational Joint Political Working Group, I'd firstly like to thank the committee chair, thank yourself for the invitation to share the work which we've been doing at today's meeting. I'd also like to thank the staff, including Louise Mason, Kataraina Maki, Coral Candler, Rachel O'Brien, Ezra Barwell, Dorothy Guthrie and Aubrey Bloomfield for their work to date in supporting the group, and also Phoebe from our governance team. As you would read in the report, Chair and members of the committee, there has been a lot of consultation with our local boards and interested groups over the long period, and now the draft is ready to go out to our community for consultation, again including our local boards who are crucial. Lastly, Chair, before I hand it over to our team, I just want to acknowledge the political working group, Councillor Fletcher, local board member Sandra Coney and Deputy Chair Margie Watson, and initially Haukura member Matua Tony Kake, initially and now whaia Pongarau Hine Rea Renata, who is currently on the working group. So, Chair, I just want to hand it over to the staff, but again, just want to acknowledge you, the Deputy Chair, in regards to this work. Yeah, ngā mihi, kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor, and thank you so much for the tireless amount of work that yourself and the working group members have put in. I know that there was a lot of meetings and offline conversations and workshops with local board members and others, so kia ora for that. And I hope you can stay for as long as you can, and I know you'll be back after lunch. Kia ora, we'll head off to, I think, who wants to go first? Coral? And if you just want to introduce yourselves, I know Councillor Alf has kind of acknowledged you all, but it would be good for everyone to know who you are if they don't.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carol Conley. I'm the Senior Policy Manager for Community Investments, and I'm here with my General Manager, Louise Mason, and my Principal Advisor, Rachel O'Brien, and Ezra Bardwell, who has over 20 years of open space and recreation planning. We have a short presentation for you to introduce the two items and take question after that. If we could go to the next, I'll go to clicker. So as you can see, we're delivering an approved program of work. We had an approval in August 2022 by the Parks, Arts and Community and Events Committee to develop a refreshed and consolidated open space sport and recreation policy framework. The framework consists of 5 documents that you can see on the screen. Those 5 documents span across 2 domains, open space and sport and recreation, and across also strategic action plans, policies, and action plans. So they're quite a varied bunch. We had an agreed scope of work and establishment of a joint political working group chaired by Councillor Filipina. So what we're proposing now is a single document entitled Manakitamaki Mokolo, which is in front of you. And today we're seeking your approval to consult with Aucklanders on the draft. So we are presenting the report in 2 parts. And the reason is that we are the first team to consolidate our policies. And we realize that there is a lot of information coming in front of you today. So to make it easier to digest, we just presented part 1, which present our strategic directions and investment principle in the first report, and the policies which set the expectation from Auckland Council for our delivery in part 2. Obviously, those two reports come together and form a single strategy, but yeah, we acknowledge that it's a lot to digest. And so hopefully we'll be able to answer questions you have. So just reflecting on the work that has been done to get to this point, the work is based on strong evidence. We have a background paper that was presented to you earlier in the year. We have had other inputs from your different decisions, but also a very strong input from the Joint Political Working Group, which I would like to acknowledge and thank for all their contribution today. We also had 2 ROPU, an advisory ROPU and a Maori ROPU, which provided also a lot of direction and input throughout the process. And we worked very closely with our council colleagues as part of the Auckland Council family. So all the Auckland Transport, Iki, Panuku, and Tataki, as well as Auckland Council staff. And so the draft strategy today reflects all of those inputs, as well as stakeholders' involvement when we did some consultation earlier in the year. So we are proposing a number of improvements compared to the 5 documents that are currently in place. And we think that having a single strategy reduces complexity and duplications. So it's a consolidation. It's also built on other key documents in council, such as Thriving Communities, Kiara Tamaki Makolo, and the Climate Plan. So we're very much reflecting direction in those documents. It is current, so it very much reflects the opportunities and challenges that Auckland faces today, and the long-term plan directions, for example, delivering differently, the council not being the default provider, and making the most of what we have. So we've taken that very much on board. It also takes a TR Maori view and focus on 4 well-being that were selected by the Maori ROPU, and which is in your document. It also integrates open space, sport, and recreation. So we're bringing these 2 domains together, reflecting that most Aucklanders are active outdoors, through walking, cycling, and running, for example. It also, we have a big section on our investment principle. So it's proposing a consistent approach to investment advice, focuses not only on cost, but on monetarizing benefits when possible and delivering value for money. Also takes a holistic view of open space. So in the past, the current document really focused on green open spaces. We're looking at green, blue, and grey open spaces, and that will support different asset groups such as Healthy Waters, Parks, and Auckland Transport to work more closely together and collaborate in the planning and delivery stage of work. And finally, it's a pragmatic plan. We've worked really hard with our colleagues in implementation and stakeholders in implementation to make sure that we reflect current issues, but also current practices. So, as I mentioned, today is about getting approval to consult with Aucklanders. We're really keen to hear more widely from all the different groups in the region. We have heard from the local boards. The local boards, in the main, support the content. They've clearly expressed they want more open space provision everywhere in the region, not just in the growth area. So they have some specific pieces of feedback on that. But what they have told us is they really want to understand the local impact of such a strategy we're proposing today. And that will require quite a bit of local specialist advice. which, as you know, the organization is pivoting to give better advice to local boards, and we recognize at the moment that's not necessarily happening. We will work with local boards to identify what advice they require, and that might be something different from what's provided today, but that's yet to come. We recommend that consultation proceed as planned in the early months of the next year, so you can actually consider adopting the revised strategy ahead of the election next year. So following consultation, and we will work with our colleagues to really simplify the plan and have something that's more digestible for Aucklanders. We will revise the plan, consult again with the local boards, seek their inputs at business meetings, and then bring back the strategy for your consideration. And so that's the end of my presentation. Yes, as I mentioned, today is for your approval, and we're happy to take questions.
Kia ora, thank you so much, and I know this has been a huge amount of work trying to get 5 policies together and make it all coherent for us to understand. I've got a comment from Mayor, but I'll wait till we've got some questions, and then we'll come back to the Mayor. And just Councillor Alf would like to move. Councillor Fletcher, would you like to second both items as the other member of the Working Party?
Yes, but in doing so, I don't think we've completely landed on this perfectly, and I think it's very good that it will be going up for consultation.
Yes, that's the most salient point, Councillor, thank you, is that this is not the final landing space, and it will go back to local boards as well as consultation with the public. Member Ashby.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. Just one from me. And acknowledging all the work gone into it, Hokura has been involved in the past, but have some questions that haven't been answered. And a key one is, I guess, how has land that's come back through treaty settlement, how is that is adjacent or otherwise with open space, how's that treated, or is there a connector or an opportunity there?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through the Chair, you'll see that in our investment approach, we have investing in honouring our tiriti or waitangi obligations. Having that as a central part of our investment approach aligns with existing council commitments, such as Te Ora o Tamaki Makaurau, Ki Ora o Tamaki Makaurau, our Māori Outcomes Framework and the Auckland Plan. It also aligns with existing principles in the Thriving Community Strategy, which will help our implementation. Having said that, open space acquisition is just planned on a case-by-case basis, but you can see, particularly in our Principle 4 in our investment approach, we have quite a focus on increasing our partnerships with mana whenua, looking at opportunities to deliver open space sport recreation opportunities with them. But in terms of specific opportunities, that would be done on a case-by-case basis, aligned to that commitment though.
Thank you. Supplementary, just a quick one. So in practice, because I understand the framework, in practice, if you've got open space opportunity right next door to return treaty settlement land, would there be a special engagement process or not?
Maybe we could come back to you with the answer, because we don't really have a specific example, and we would need to seek an answer from our colleagues who do the acquisitions. Is that all right?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking for the answer being yes, but I appreciate you have to go back.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Watson.
The local boards remarked that they wanted to understand what the local impacts were, understandably. When you look at documents such as this, it can be very hard to visualise what it means for any given part of Auckland. Like you've got open space, you've got provisions of various magnitudes. You said that there was going to get some expertise or some specialist advice on that to inform them. I'm kind of curious to know what is it that specialist advice is going to indicate in any given area?
And thank you, Councillor Watson, for the question. And I think it is a really important one, given the feedback that we've had from local boards. Obviously, you know, there will be different situations in the different communities. When and if the strategy is adopted, we would be working with local boards in terms of the advice needed for their situation, and particularly as they start planning through their local board plans and work program as well. As Carola said, we are sort of moving more and more as an organisation to recognising the advice needed by local boards, and we'd certainly be working very closely with our colleagues to ensure that that happened.
Different parts of Auckland have different dynamics going as far as open space. Some, you know, are quite well served in the established areas. The new areas, we've always in the past assumed that, you know, so bigger development really qualifies for so much open space. So is it going to move away from that in any way? Does this strategy provide the possibility that somehow we'll be changing in a marked fashion from what we've been doing, say, since the foundation of the super city?
Again, thank you for the question, and that is quite a complex one looking across Auckland. What the strategy does is it really provides the tools, and alongside looking at more empowered decision making, fairer funding, the portfolio review, will enable local boards to look more closely at their situation. The strategy itself doesn't provide further funding. That would need to be done through normal processes, but it does provide the guidelines and the tools for looking at future investment. Of course, local boards themselves do have, you know, through fairer funding, they have, in some cases, do have more opportunities there, and they can look at various tools to, I suppose, pursue what they would wish to do in terms of future provision.
Thanks, Councillor. And last question, Councillor Walker.
I've just got a question around the context of our open space over time and what is currently happening. If we look at open space in Auckland across the region, substantial amounts of open space have been provided by benefactors, philanthropic gifts, you know, Cornwall Park, certainly a number of our regional parks. I'm not aware of what active detail we've got in this plan for actually fostering that and encouraging that. If we assess it over time, it's substantial. The other issue that I just put to you in respect of context is there doesn't appear to be much information around the importance of passive areas of bush, the important representation of the preservation of various ecosystems across the region. That has received emphasis in the past, but it doesn't appear to be in here in terms of any contextual information. And then the other element of context that's also lacking is the present situation, where I know that often developers and people approaching council offering to gift land is turned down in a number of instances, because the comment will be made, oh, you know, we've got some costs attached to maintaining this, or it doesn't quite fit. I mean, that's a current reality. It isn't addressed here, but it is a concern that I've got. So what opportunity is there around providing some of this contextual information to inform this?
Thanks for the question. Rachel is going to answer the question about donation, and then Ezra about conservation, and I'll answer a question about gifting land.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the first part of that question around that context of philanthropic donations or the role of philanthropic funding within this context, our investment approach very much looks at strengthening that opportunity to use a wider range of funding sources. Philanthropic funding is obviously one of those, including donations of land. It can also include other things. We would very much be looking at how we set ourselves up in a much more proactive way to seek out those opportunities, as well as being more responsive to those opportunities. That can include things like working on kind of menu of opportunities for philanthropic funders. So I can confirm that's very much a part of our investment approach in strengthening the opportunity to do that. And I'll pass on to Ezra for the next part.
Thank you. Just in respect to natural environment, open space. So through the development of the draft, the Joint Political Working Group gave us a clear direction to consider the natural environment and the contribution that those sort of open spaces have. That's reflected in Strategic Direction 3. Policy 2 also speaks about conservation open space. However, when we go out for the feedback, if we find that there's a concern that it's not given enough profile, and we've just heard from Councillor Walker, we certainly can, could add an objective to Policy 1 to make it more obvious, to make it more, you give it more priority. We did consult with the Natural Environment Strategy team, and we've got some very clear criterion for the acquisition of that sort of open space, and looking at the qualities that we would like to have, what would be qualify for public ownership. So I think the stuff's there. It's maybe just buried a little bit and maybe needs to be brought front a bit better.
Sure. If I can just address a particular issue. I'm often made aware...
Is it a question, Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I'm just generating the context first, and then the question will follow, Mr. Chair. I'm often made aware by developers of instances where they've offered to give land to council across the region. And I'd suggest this is happening on a weekly basis, and they're turned down. They're turned down for a range of reasons. Generally, as councillors, we're just totally unaware of this because these decisions are made under delegated authority. But it does concern me that the quantum of land is hugely significant, and we're making those decisions today. I just wonder how it's possible through this form of strategy to address that issue, because in my opinion, from experiences I'm aware of, we're not always making the appropriate decisions there. And there isn't any context around this, but it amounts to maybe, sometimes thousands of acres.
Did you want to answer that one, Carol?
Yes, thanks for the question. I think the answer is that yes, there are opportunities to have land gifted, but we do not necessarily accept gift if it's not a piece of land that, first of all, we want or need, and there are costs associated with the maintenance of the land. And if the land has environmental benefit and those benefits can be ensured through other means than ownership in a cheaper way to council, that's the preferred way forward that this policy is putting forward. So if you also look at our open space provision policy and acquisition policy, we're looking at really strong criteria for the land that we will acquire at cost or at no cost, and that's to ensure that we get the land that we want, because there's always cost associated with ownership. So that's the answer.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I understand that answer, The concern that I'm putting in terms of context is that that process is not indicated here.
Okay, we'll make
And-
sure that we have.
And I'd suggest
Yeah.
it's important that it is, so that we know the consequence of that decision,
Yeah.
because it is
Cool.
hugely significant.
We will make sure when it comes back, they'll have the context, but we also need the context with the DC's team and also finance and others, because there's several kind of boxes that this goes through. But good point, councillor.
I have one other
Yeah.
question that goes to context, and it goes like this. Essentially, we have a situation across greenfield areas where we are not going to have anywhere near the amount of reserve space that historically we've had in Auckland, particularly in developed areas. So the consequence is that the opportunity for facilities in these greenfield areas to cater for a huge number of sports and recreational groups simply does not exist. For example, if, and I have to generate this context, Mr. Chair, if there's a group, say some Scouts or Girl Guides or any number of clubs and societies, and they want to erect something in greenfields areas, it's nigh on impossible because the space isn't there. The only reason we have these areas in our
What is
current
the
stock,
question, please, councillor?
I'm just coming to that, is because that land has been gifted or this facility has been enabled. Is it possible to convey some of this context in what we go out with so that the people submitting are aware that the circumstance in greenfields areas is somewhat akin to a desert in respect of the sort of community facilities that they've been used to enjoying? I mean, that is the reality, but again, it's not obvious here.
Do you have a comment on that? I think
Yes, thanks for
there
the
is some context in the document.
Yes, thanks for the questions. You may recollect we had a workshop in July and then again in October related to open space provision standards. And the current policy was assessed, and we acknowledged that it doesn't deliver a sufficient level of capacity in greenfield areas. And so we're proposing changes to the provision policy to better deliver for those communities. And we're proposing through a couple of options that we're going to consult with Aucklanders on. So they will have the opportunity to engage with the context and the topic and provide feedback. We've already had some feedback. We tested our engagement approach through the People's Panel. And at the moment, the preferred option is option 2, which is delivering in those communities in medium and high density, where there's low to medium capacity of open space per capita. So this is acknowledged, and we're trying to find a solution to this problem. Obviously, the policy can only be implemented as budget enables. That's always for all the work that we all do at council, a caveat. But yes, thanks for your question.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
Thank you for that. First of all, I think I would support what you're trying to do. I think turning 5 strategies into one is a good thing. Can't oppose that. So well done in that regard. I do have a couple of questions. Open spaces. Some of the open spaces that people regard as kind of like public open spaces have been leased off forever to golf courses, for instance, like the Remuera Golf Course, which we own, but we can't kind of use. Is that going to be involved here somehow or other? I've been trying to encourage those sort of people to perhaps provide some walking tracks through the golf course as well to do a bit more about improving their public licence to be there as well.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So currently we've got 1,300 community leases through primarily our reserves. So golf courses are parts of community groups leasing our spaces. and some are commercial leases as well. And it's down to the local board as to whether they wish to continue with those leases or change the use. When there is a gap in open space provision, we very much encourage the local board to look at whether some of that land can be used as recreational parks rather than used for a single use. And on the golf course specifically, I know that there has been some good example of golf courses enabling more community access to the land, like Remuera Golf that you mentioned, but also Pupuki. So there is a little bit of a change of practices about enabling more community access outside the golfing community.
Okay, because they're large pieces of land, not a lot of people on them. There's plenty of room for people to wander around. I think we should push that. They also form a part of our stormwater management open spaces. So is that going to be covered underneath this proposal? Simple yes or no rather than great long stories, please.
Short answer, yes. So we've worked really closely with Healthy Waters, and we see that there's a lot of common benefits in planning open space together. Open spaces that are used for stormwater along streams, for example, deliver recreational benefits. Recreation parks like sports fields can better deliver for stormwater management. So we're working together, and both type of open spaces are covered in the draft.
And last one, we've just through the Category 7 buyouts, which I'm very grumpy about, we're ending up with a hell of a lot of land there. Can you comb through those? There's a lot of open space there, but I don't have knocked the buildings down. Some of those are dogs, but there might be something in there. Will you have a hunt around that, and can you add that into your consultation, please?
Yes, so that's being looked into, and some will become potentially parks, and it's all about the risk level acceptable to be incorporated in the network.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last question, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair. I guess as a member of the Working Party, it would have been great to have come back with a clear and unequivocal statement with an enduring vision of going into the next century. But this is not that clear, and I don't blame in any way the Working Party or the staff. It's just a particularly complex piece of work to bring all those strategies together. My concern and the question that I have is I think it's unrealistic to expect to go out for a month's consultation or around that on something that is so complex and so important to people. What confidence can officers give us that the public are going to be able to understand what they're being required to consult on, and whether there will be sufficient time available to do justice to such an important issue?
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. So we've been working with our colleagues in engagement to summarize the draft strategy into a 6-page summary so that Aucklanders can understand and engage with. And obviously the strategic direction is probably the thing that the general public will want to comment on the most, as well as the open space provision standards options. When it comes to the more technical aspects of the draft strategy, namely the policies, it's very much directed to a more technical audience, our implementers and funders, and we will just have stakeholders engagement. We've also already had offers from Sports New Zealand and Active to support us with engaging with the sport and recreation sector, for example. And so we will use those channels to make sure we have a reach. We will also work with local boards to make sure we just get good feedback from local groups and organizations. But yes, it is a lot to consult on. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, I don't need to speak later, but I watched members of the Working Party take months to come to grips with all of this. I do have to say that I think it's entirely unrealistic that the timeline that we are working to for this is going to be met with anything meaningful.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, the chair's just had to step out, so I've taken over. Councillor Walker, you're the next question.
Is there any reason why we couldn't have a longer submission period? And I'll just make a comment around that. There are a large number of groups that interact with the park space. Have you considered how a group is able to get some information out to its members, maybe make some form of decision at a meeting and the like, and respond within the short time frame you've got? And I'll just repeat my earlier question: why can't we have a longer time frame?
Thank you, Councillor Walker, and also acknowledging Councillor Fletcher's concerns as well too. I think the main thing around the engagement with Aucklanders is that we're working very hard to make this content accessible and understandable to the general public, as well as to the people that have a particular interest in it. In terms of our process, we have allowed a month for that, and as Carola said, we'll be working very closely with the engagement team to make sure that we do get the broadest input into this, as well as working with those specialist groups in the sport and recreation field as well. In terms of our process, we also do need, following that consultation, to go back to local boards. It's really important that they have the time to look at this and give their final comments. And of course, we'll be incorporating both the feedback from Aucklanders, the various stakeholder groups and local boards into that final draft that then comes to committee. Our time frame really is that we are hitting up against the election period next year. So we do want to ensure that there is sufficient time to carry out those processes and to get that report to you with the full analysis and consideration of what I think there will be quite a bit of interest in this. Certainly we will take your comments on board around timeline and see if there is any opportunity there. But at the moment, in terms of looking at the process we need to go through to bring this final report back to committee, that is the period we're looking at. Thank you.
Just a follow-up question. Is there a critical path, and if the timing of the critical path would allow for another month, is that possible?
From looking at the critical path, we're probably thinking that that is going to be difficult. We certainly will go back to see if there is a slight adjustment to that period, but our assessment would be that we need to pretty much stick with the month if we are to ensure this report to come back to committee with all the elements considered as I've outlined. Thank you.
Yeah, our normal timeframes for long-term plans and annual budgets are 4 weeks. I would hope we could get, as long as we've got good information out there, we can get that across the line as well. Right, there are no more questions. I'll just get you all to step back. Thank you so much. It has been moved and seconded. There's no one who wants to speak at the moment. So I'll just go, all those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? No, perfect. Right, we'll go till 1:45 for a break. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, so just over half an hour. Thank you.